Okay, another huge release here. This is version 5.4, which has brought us the long-awaited advanced CRM. And along with that, there's some extra ability to link advanced CRM records into custom modules or other module items with a data source, and some work around the GDPR compliance with that as well. Then we have some custom reports is now being released as well, which is looking really good. And then some other changes with payment gateways. So let's dive in to the first item here is the payment flow for two-step payments. So this was a requirement for all of the European region. So now we have Stripe and a new gateway called Bambora, which accepts two-step payment. So under your settings and payment, when you add a payment gateway or go to now edit either Stripe or Bambora, you'll have this option to have two-step card payments. So basically it allows you to collect the payment after the actual order has been submitted or at a later time. So you can read through the actual payment flow there. There's some documentation links to Stripe on how that actually works on their end, and some more details on what actually happens in Treepl with the orders being set up and workflow notifications going out and all that sort of stuff based on the payment being approved. So have a read through that flow there. And also with the Stripe payment gateway, again, I think to do with the EU region, there's the strong customer authentication has been implemented for the Stripe gateway. So I think that basically allows like a two-factor authentication for any payment processing. But again, if that relates to you, have a read through the payment flow there, how that works now in Treepl. And then just, of course, a note here to say the new payment gateway of Bambora has been added. And again, that's for the EU regions. So obviously a popular gateway there, and to satisfy some regulatory requirements there. And as I understand it, so far it's saying the Norway and Switzerland logic version has been implemented. So there's a link there to that specific documentation. So it may only relate to certain regions, I think. But have a read through that if that affects you. And again, that's linked in with the two-step payment process. Okay, the next one here is the custom reports. So there's a new tab here called Reports, Custom Reports. And this is quite similar to how BC was doing their reports, where you can build them based on the data points and any filters that you want to run on those. But here, any created report is automatically saved as a report item, which you can rerun at any time or edit it. So you can see here, just like in BC, we have you choose the type of report you want to run based on the different areas of data that you want to pull out. And also the make public option, which from my memory in BC, I think it works a little bit differently. Make public perhaps needs to be reworded because it's a little bit misleading. It actually relates to the administrators. So if you don't make this public, then it's only available to you when you're logged in as an admin. If you make it public, it's available to all admins. So it's not actually public in the sense of you can put it online and let anyone look at the data. So, it should be make shareable or something like that. But yeah, just to clarify that. And then, so you can, of course, go ahead and create a report, which gets saved. unlike BC where you didn't have to save a report, but these ones get saved by default. Go and select your fields just like in BC. So we'll just select a few there. Yeah, I think it might be nice to have like a save and next button here to work through the steps, but either way, this all works quite well. Then you can add multiple filters, filtering any of the data, and you can actually filter any of the data that's available, not just the data points that you want to pull out into the report. So I think that's a well thought feature, because you may want to filter based on a particular data point, but you don't need that data point in the actual report. So you do have that flexibility as well. Create your filters. I might just leave that out. And then view the results. And of course you can export the results as well. Okay, and the release notes here go into quite a bit of detail on all the options and fields and whatnot. So have a read through that. And then just a note here that you can export the report as well, which I just mentioned. Okay, the next item here is the import and export of prices, attributes, and inventory information for products. So previously that was missing, so quite difficult to import a lot of products. So now we can, from what I can see, we can pretty much import all the information around products. So everything's there now, from what I can see. And the formatting can get quite complex if you're using a lot of these, particularly around the inventory and attributes. So have a good read of this. I mean, always the best thing to do is to create some dummy products with the type of information in them that you're going to be importing, and then export that out to have a look at how it's all formatted. But it is all noted here as well. So hopefully that's clear, but it does get pretty hairy. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of information here. But we can now import, which is great. Okay. So the next item here was a liquid security issue on form submission. So basically, just there was the ability to submit liquid and possibly even scripts via a form, which could result in being able to pull data from your site or run scripts on your site. So they've put some security in place to cover that. You can read through the details. It basically just blocks anything like that being submitted via a form. Okay, data source field. So if you have a data source custom field in a module, I think there were some performance-related issues with this because of, particularly if you had multiple data source fields, they were all calling in all that information from those other modules, the data source that you had selected. So now I think basically when you click onto that field, when you're editing a custom module, it performs the search of just the first 50 items, I believe. So it's not pulling in a whole ton of information all on load and slowing down the admin. So from my test, that was working fairly well. So not only if you just wanted to look at what data was available and select from the list, which would happen if you just select the field, but once you start typing, it'll actually do a live search as well, so it filters down to what you're searching for as well. So it sort of covers both areas there if you're just looking for a particular field or you actually want to search for it. Recapture V3 Validation. So there was just some, I think this was more in the background, just a little fix for the JavaScript with V3 Validation. So I don't think there's really anything you need to do there. Then we get into the advanced CRM, so there's quite a lot on this. But very similar to how BC had the custom form, the extended forms, I think they called it, something like that, where you basically set up a group of fields, and then you can apply those fields to other areas of the system. So not just the CRM, but also apply them to orders or bookings and other form submissions. So, okay, so this is found under the CRM menu, Advanced CRM Groups. And so basically, you can just come in and create any number of groups that you need. So for this test, I created one called Company, where we want to collect some extra or additional company information. So the company name, their ABN, or some sort of business number, and whether they're local to you or not. So there are three sort of custom fields that we added. You could add new fields, and I think we have all the fields available too. So date, time, checkbox, drop downs, upload fields, all that stuff. So there's nothing missing there, I don't think, which is great. We can set them as required as well. And basically then you select like where you want to apply it to. And the great thing is you can apply it to multiple things as well. So if you want to attach it to your contact records, as well as orders that are created, so you can capture that detail in both places, or just one or the other. And this is, of course, if you want to apply these fields by default to let's say, all contact records, so that all contact records will have these custom fields. But very similar to BC, you can also individually apply a custom CRM group to a custom record or an order or anything like that. So actually, if we say went to an order and we just want to look at one particular order, we can scroll right down to the bottom and add custom fields, and we can select the company one that we had. And so this will just apply it to this particular order record. So you may have really specific or really custom pieces of information that you may want to collect in some cases, and in some cases you don't. So you can apply that on more of an ad hoc basis as well, rather than doing it globally. So I think the next item goes into that. The linkage rules basically describes that, how you can assign it to everything globally or individually. Then we have the attach custom fields group to web form. So to actually collect this information from the front end, you now have the ability to add all those fields or that group of fields to a form as well. So when we're creating our form, let's just start a new one. And along with our typical system fields, there's now a little heading here we can drop down for custom CRM groups, and we can see our company one that I created, and we can add that in straight away. Then viewing the form code, we can see it adds all that in automatically for us. So in the release notes here go into the details on the naming of these fields, which you can see here. So all human readable code as well, not like in BC with lots of IDs and long strings. So that makes things a lot easier as well. So the next item just goes into, just like I mentioned before, when we added the custom fields to an order, likewise to a CRM, you can add the custom fields just on an ad hoc basis as you need to. And then we have a new component tag that allows us to pull out that custom groups to the front end. And further down, there's also a new custom a new component tag for pulling out just the CRM records. So there's two new ways to pull out data, one for the actual CRM contact records, and then the CRM contact groups. And perhaps a little misleading here in the name, because these custom groups, as I said, not only relate to the CRM, they could just be an attachment to an order or an event booking or something like that. So they're not specifically related to the CRM in a sense. So that's why there's two different modules to pull out that data. So this goes into all the options that you have with that component, and this will be documented soon. But one big gotcha here with outputting this sort of data along with an actual CRM record, if that's what you are needing this for on the front end, because of the whole GDPR compliance and privacy issues now. The contact record itself will need to have an option ticked on, this new is data using allowed. So only from the front end can this be added to a form where the user has to tick it on, or maybe we can hide it and have it ticked by default. I'm not sure yet, but that's the only way you can output any data that's related to an actual CRM record. I think if the custom groups are added to, say, an order or an event booking or something, then that doesn't come into play, because you're just outputting that information. You're not outputting the customer record. But I'll get into that in a little bit. So a whole bunch of information here on how that component works. And it's also added to the toolbox now, so you should find that in the toolbox and be able to configure it a little bit more easily. And of course, just a note here that this is a Pro Plan and Plus feature. Okay, and now we come to that data using Boolean that I was talking about. So if we take a look at a custom record, so when we're editing a customer record, you'll see at the bottom here, allow listing my contact details in the CMS. So this basically needs to be ticked on to be able to pull any of the CRM details out onto the front end. With the exception of just showing a logged in user their own details, you can do that. But if you wanted to, say, create a directory, a public directory that's listing out lots of people's information, then this tick box has to be turned on. And although it looks like you can tick it on here in the admin, once you click save, it doesn't actually apply. So if I refresh the page, go back down, so it's off. So we can't actually turn this on from the admin. It has to be done from the front end. I think the reason why this tick box does work here is because you can turn it off. So if it has been submitted as on, as an admin can come in and turn it off. So I guess the tick box has to be enabled for the admin, but yeah, you can't turn it on. So yeah, just be aware of that if that's the use case that you have for it. So there's a bit more information on that. Okay, and then we come to the actual linkage to of a customer record to another module item. So we basically have a new data source type, and that's a CRM record. So if you're creating, let's say, a custom module that just going to move these. We're going to set up a new property for this custom module. And we can see here now above data source, so it's very similar to data source, but now we have CRM records. So that will allow us to select from any of the existing CRM records in the system. I've actually already added that here so we can see that. But again, when you're editing the CRM record, when you're editing the item, let's just look at this one. And you try and add a person, you can see there's nothing coming up at the moment because it will also only allow you to select CRM records that have that data using checkbox turned on. You'll only be able to select from those records. Okay, so with all those sort of steps in place, it kind of does hinder that whole feature a little bit, but I guess it's required for privacy and whatnot. At the end of the day, I guess you can always, if you're not in a region that requires that sort of privacy, you can always get around it by creating your own custom modules to do this sort of thing, like we would previously be doing it. But it is a nice feature with having it all link together properly and those component tags to pull all that information out. And so on that, here's the second component tag that we have for just purely for CRM contacts. And very similar to all the other component tags we have, where we can filtering and limits, pagination, all that sort of stuff. So that's all listed here on how that works with the data that comes out of that. And of course, that's in the toolbox as well under the CRM component. So in the toolbox, in the CRM, we have the two new CRM data components. Okay, the next new feature is the ability to parse JSON with Liquid. So this is a great feature. I unfortunately haven't had a chance to really test it out yet, but basically it allows you to pull in pure JSON source, and then that will be available within your Liquid code to use. So, and I believe the good thing about this implementation is that the JSON source can come from pretty much anywhere. You can select a path from the site. Maybe there's a JSON file that's living on the server somewhere. You can pull it in via a path. You can pull it in from an external site as well, so a full URL. Or you can just have a pure JSON string that's hard-coded into that page or layout. So you could construct that yourself with additional Liquid, perhaps. So really quite flexible there, and that's going to allow you to do some more advanced coding, particularly linking other data sources into your site. So it's going to be really helpful. Okay, so there's a little bit more information here. There's a link to the backlog item that this came from, so you can get a little bit more of a feel on how you might be able to use that. A little change here to extend the maximum character length for URLs. So that's just gone up by 54 characters. A little bit more flexibility there. We have adding shipping address to orders, so for actual system fields for the shipping address now. So I think this was something that was missing. I think you had to add them to the form as custom fields yourself, but now that's built into the actual order. So that will be captured when a shopping cart order is being placed. So the shipping details will be saved with the order, and you'll be able to pull them out with Liquid as well from the order object. So the order object will be updated in the documentation as well to reflect that. But there's some information here on how you'd pull that out and render it, say, in your workflow perhaps, or your invoice. And we have the saving state for when you're viewing a table in the admin. So let's say we're viewing this custom module, the list of items, and we want to sort it by the URL. Okay, so we've sorted that by the URL, and then we navigate away, and then we come back to that same module. The URL has saved the state that we were viewing that before. So if you always view a particular module the same way, or you want it kept the same way, then this will now save how you last viewed it. I think we did actually have that before the whole custom table was introduced, but with this new layout, it was kind of lost. But so that's basically back now, and I like how it's specific to each module. So I think in BC they had this, but it was across the whole admin. So you'd look at one item in a particular way, and then when you look at another one, it was sorted the same way, which often didn't make sense. So yeah, really good that it's per module. We now have the ability to resend an invoice via email. So looking at an order. We can email the invoice to the client again, or send a test to the logged in admin user, so we can view that ourselves. We have some changes now to the beta features. So under the gear icon up here, beta features, most of the previous beta features are now enabled by default, so they're out of this section. So that included the advanced payment flow, advanced URL manager, and the new liquid engine. So that's basically applied to all sites now. So if you're having any problems with liquid, or your payment flow is not working, this is probably the cause. So just make sure you get everything up to date with that. And so the only new beta feature we have currently in play is the new anti-spam protection. So which is noted in the next item here. So basically, they're going to force the recapture for any form that isn't behind a login, or isn't submitted via a logged in user, or doesn't have a payment field attached. So basically, if it's behind a login or it has payment fields, then you don't need the recapture. But for any other form, recapture is now going to be required. So I believe, I always put it on forms, but I believe at the moment, say you just have a general contact form, it doesn't actually require recapture version 2 or 3. But in the the next version, I think, or it says here, there's a warning for version 5.5, so probably the next release. This is going to come into play as default, so make sure you check your forms if you have any forms that aren't using recapture, that are just publicly accessible, and are the payment form, then you'll need to apply recapture. So then we just have 4 bugs we fixed in this one. So this basically just is a bug fix to basically show an alert or a validation error if you try and create any custom properties for a module using an existing system name, so URL or name or something like that. So basically just has to be a unique name. There was a little bug with the verified domains. So when you, for email domains, so when you would verify your email domain for sending emails out with the system, looks like there was just some case sensitive issue there, where, but now I guess it doesn't look at the case that you've added that domain using. So whether you've used capitals or not, it's going to validate that domain either way. Okay, and there's a little bug with snippets. So if you had a snippet and you had the this object, or you were calling like this.name or something, intending to pull out the name of the actual item that or page you were on, it was actually referencing the snippet's name, not the outer item or component. So I think that's been corrected now. That so basically just a scoping issue for the this object. So basically the snippet shouldn't see itself as an item that you're going to be pulling data from directly. It's going to pull the information from whatever it's in, if that makes sense. And then just the placement of the the CSS assets that the CMS outputs in certain cases, inserting it more at the top of the head rather than the bottom of the head, so that you don't get any CSS conflicts. Yeah, so we can easily override that. And that's it. So hopefully there's a lot of good things in there for everyone, and look forward to the next release.